You awaken in darkness. The air is damp, tasting of rust and rot. Your wrists ache, cold iron bites into your skin. Chains drag with every shallow breath, a metallic rattle that echoes like distant screams. And then the whispers, not words, not voices you can name, but a chorus of broken throats, murmuring of pain that has no language. You're not alone. You never were. History tells you of kings and wars, of crowns lifted and thrones toppled, but those are lies of comfort. The true record is carved into flesh, into bone, into the silence of those who could not speak. It is not the battles that shaped humanity, but the punishments, those carefully designed rituals meant not just to wound the body, but to shatter the spirit. These were not punishments of necessity. No, they were performances. Each lash, each chain, each public display was a theater of power, a reminder that suffering could be turned into a spectacle, that humiliation was more effective than execution, that the erosion of dignity was the true weapon of kings and priests alike. Foucault once whispered that power is not just wielded, it is performed upon the body. You feel that performance now, as your blood pulses against the iron. The chains do not only bind your wrists, they erase your name, your voice, your very self. What remains is not a person, but a warning. This is the thesis the history books hide. Punishment was philosophy. It was a study of how far a soul could bend before it broke, how much shame a body could endure before it ceased to be human. And as you stand in this darkness, you begin to sense it. The cruelty was never random. It was art. It was ritual. It was spectacle. But the whispers grow louder now, dragging you toward the first chamber, the first case where flesh was turned into theater. The stench reaches you first, burning metal, sharp and bitter, filling your throat until every breath tastes of blood and ash. Then you see it, a monstrous shape glimmering in firelight, a hollow bowl of bronze, its surface glowing like the skin of a dying sun. The ancients of Sicily, in the 6th century BCE, called it an offering of justice. But you know better. It was not justice. It was theater. They called it the Brazen Bull, a device of torment, forged by Perillos for the tyrant Phalaris. A body made to resemble an animal, yet inside it was a coffin of fire. Victims were dragged screaming, stripped of name and dignity, and sealed within. Then the flames were stoked. The bronze grew hotter, skin blistered, lungs filled with smoke, until every cry twisted into something unrecognizable. The pipes in its mouth were engineered. Yes, engineered to transform agony into music. To the spectators, the screams became the bellow of a beast, a lie of sound designed to amuse. Imagine it. A crowd gathered, watching death disguised as spectacle. A man reduced to nothing more than an echo within a machine, his suffering transmuted into the roar of an animal. The Greeks claimed to prize philosophy, logic, the purity of form, and yet here they sculpted pain into art. What kind of mind looks upon fire and decides not merely to kill, but to shape death into performance? Plutarch would later condemn the device, writing that cruelty disguised as beauty corrupts even the gods. But the bull was not destroyed. It was imitated, whispered across centuries. Because cruelty, once given form, does not vanish. It evolves. You stand before the glowing beast, its mouth still singing the memory of screams. And you understand, this was only the beginning. Pain was never meant to be hidden. It was meant to be displayed. The fire fades into shadow now, and another device waits in the dark. The flames of the bronze bull dim, and in their ashes you see another stage, far from Greece, in the courts of imperial China. Here, cruelty was not sudden, not fiery, but deliberate. Lingchi, the punishment of slow death. A ritual practiced from the 10th to the early 20th century. Not a single stroke, but thousands. Flesh taken piece by piece, until the body became a map of absence. Witnesses spoke of it with trembling hands. Some said the first cuts brought screams, but soon numbness set in, a drowning quiet where agony dissolved into silence. One condemned man, recorded by missionaries, whispered before his final breath, "At first, the knife burns. Then nothing. What remains after nothing? Only the gaze of the crowd." Because this was never only about killing. Death could be swift, merciful, even invisible. But Lingchi was designed as performance. The body became a canvas, carved in front of all, so that the watching masses could see power made flesh. Each slice was a sermon, obedience enforced not by reason, but by fear of the knife's patience. Here the state became godlike. To execute was not enough, it had to unmake. To punish was not enough, it had to erase. Control was proven not in life or death, but in the ability to stretch dying into eternity, to make pain itself a public ritual. And as you imagine the silence, the crowd watching, the body unspooling, the soul already gone, you begin to see the pattern. Punishment is not simply about law. It is theater. It is a mirror. It is the ritual by which society reveals what it truly worships, the spectacle of suffering. The knives fade, but the silence they leave behind does not. It carries you onward, into yet darker corridors of cruelty. You are laid down, not on earth, but between two hollowed boats, your body trapped in wood as though sealed in a coffin that refuses to close. Your head, your arms, your legs are forced to remain outside, helpless offerings to the air. They press milk and honey into your mouth until your stomach revolts, bloated and sick. Sweetness drips down your skin, coating you in sugar and rot. And then the buzzing begins. Flies, gnats, mosquitoes. The air thickens with them, drawn to your flesh as if the sentence itself had summoned them. They land, they crawl, they feed. The honey becomes glue, fixing wings and mandibles to your body. Insects slip into your nostrils, your ears, the corners of your eyes. Days stretch into weeks. You no longer measure time by the sun, but by the rhythm of the crawling. This was scaphism, the Persian art of execution. Here, nature itself became the torturer, the rivers carrying decay, the insects reducing a human being to soil. Not steel, not fire, but life itself turned against you. And if even nature can be weaponized, what hope remains in man's hands? A wheel waits in the square, not to carry travelers, but to break them. You are bound upon its wooden frame, your limbs stretched across the spokes like fragile branches. The executioner lifts his iron bar, and bone yields with a crack that drowns even your own scream. One strike is never enough. Each limb must be shattered, woven between spokes until the body becomes part of the wheel itself, a grotesque sculpture of ruin. Hours pass. The sun drifts overhead. Yet the crowd does not turn away. They cheer, they jeer, they drink as though this spectacle were a festival. In their laughter, cruelty becomes ritual, cruelty becomes order. The wheel is not only an execution. It is a mirror showing what a society is willing to celebrate when the suffering is not their own. So ask yourself, who truly punishes? The hand that swings the iron, or the countless eyes that watch and cheer? It is small, almost delicate at first glance, a metallic pear, polished and cold. But its petals are no fruit. Once placed inside the body, the mouth, the rectum, the very womb, a screw is turned and the pear blooms. Each twist forces the steel wider, tearing not from without, but from within. Flesh becomes soil for a flowering of agony. Historians argue over its truth. Some claim it was rare, even exaggerated, a tale whispered more than practiced. Others point to scattered artifacts, devices displayed in museums like relics of nightmare. Whether myth or memory, its presence lingers because it speaks to the paranoia of its age. A time when sin was hunted in secret corners, when silence was enforced by iron that could not be spoken of. The pair of anguish may never have been common, but its horror is undeniable, proof that fear itself was a weapon, and rumor could wound as deeply as steel. A wooden form stands in the square, shaped like a donkey, yet sharpened to a merciless wedge. You are forced to straddle it, your weight pressing down upon the blade of wood that splits you slowly, deliberately. To deepen the torment, stones are tied to your legs, pulling you lower, dragging flesh against edge until the body itself begins to tear apart. This was the Spanish donkey, a punishment whispered across both battlefield and Inquisition. Heretics felt its bite, but so did soldiers accused of desertion. It was not only pain, but spectacle, a theater of humiliation. To sit upon the donkey was to be stripped of dignity, to be displayed as mockery, your suffering turned into laughter for the crowd. Here, cruelty was not swift death. It was ridicule. It was the body reduced to a grotesque puppet, broken not just in flesh, but in honor. And sometimes, humiliation wounds deeper than execution ever could. It looks like a throne, but forged for no king. An iron chair, its seat, arms, and back bristling with hundreds of spikes, each waiting for the weight of a living body. You're bound to it, straps pulled tight, so there's no escape, no movement, no relief. At first the spikes pierce shallow, drawing beads of blood, but then the fire is lit beneath. Heat rises through the metal, flesh softens, and the body sinks deeper onto its thorns. In Germany, in France, this was justice displayed as furniture. A chair of silence, where the condemned sat motionless as their own weight became the executioner. Screams were muffled not by mercy, but by inevitability. There was no struggle left, only the slow collapse of breath into smoke. The irony is cruel. A chair, symbol of rest, turned into a throne of torment. And on it, the victim became both ruler and ruin, crowned in suffering, seated in silence. The ground is sharpened into spears. You are lifted not to be freed, but to be dropped upon one. The stake pierces, entering slowly, tearing a path through organs until it finds its exit. And then you remain, alive, skewered, suspended between earth and sky. Hours pass, sometimes days. Every breath is a wound. Every heartbeat pushes you further down the wood. This was Wallachia in the 15th century, under Vlad III, the man history would name the Impaler. Chronicles speak of thousands condemned in a single order, forests of bodies raised like grotesque trees. From a distance, they looked like a battlefield frozen in time. But up close, the air was thick with moans, with a stench of blood and rot, with eyes still watching the sky, as if it might offer escape. Here, cruelty was scaled into terror. Not one victim, but legions, left as warnings to all who entered. The message was clear. Disobedience would not just kill you. It would turn your body into a monument. And as you sway upon the stake, watching others sway beside you, you realize this was not punishment alone. It was spectacle, carved into the landscape itself. The cauldron waits, filled not with food, but with oil, water, or pitch. You are bound and lowered slowly, so that death is not sudden but drawn across every inch of skin. The liquid sears first the feet, then the legs, blistering, peeling, until the body thrashes against the ropes that hold it. The air fills with the hiss of flesh cooking. So did the French, a sound too final to be mistaken. In England, under Henry VIII, records confirm its use against poisoners. Men and women alike boiled alive as public warning. Justice, they called it. Yet what justice is measured in screams. Here the line between law and cruelty dissolves. When the state boils flesh, it does not only destroy a body, it corrupts its own authority. The cauldron becomes both execution and confession, that beneath the robes of power, cruelty was always the truest law. The cross is raised, not as symbol of salvation, but as machinery of shame. Long before Christianity, Rome perfected crucifixion, a punishment stretched across wood and sky. You are nailed or bound, arms spread wide, body sagging under its own weight, until every breath becomes a struggle. The sun scorches, the wind bites, and still you linger, hours into days, as vultures circle above, waiting for your body to yield. When Spartacus's revolt was crushed in 71 BCE, 6,000 slaves were crucified along the Appian Way. Mile after mile, crosses lined the road, each bearing a body that was no longer a man, but a message. To resist Rome was not only to die, but to be displayed, stripped of name, dignity, and burial, left as food for birds and spectacle for travelers. This was not faith. It was order enforced through horror. Crucifixion turned the human form into a billboard of suffering, a silent warning nailed against the sky. You were no longer yourself. You were Rome's sentence, carved into flesh. You fall, not onto spikes, not into fire, but into silence. The stone walls close around you, narrow, damp, unyielding. This is the oubliette, the dungeon of forgetting. No spectacle, no roaring crowd. Only a pit so tight you cannot lie down, cannot stretch, cannot escape. Food is rarely lowered. More often, nothing comes at all. Here the executioner is not steel, but time. Hunger gnaws, thirst cracks your lips, and darkness presses against your eyes until even your own body feels foreign. The only sound is water dripping from stone, each drop a cruel reminder that the world above continues without you. In France and beyond, the oubliette was not about display. It was about erasure. You were not killed. You were unremembered. Stripped of witness, stripped of voice, you dissolved into silence until nothing of you remained but bones in the dark. And perhaps this is the most haunting cruelty of all. Not pain, not fire, but the certainty that you were forgotten before you were gone. The ground splits open into a pit, but what waits below is not stone. It is movement, scales shifting, jaws opening, eyes glinting above black water. You are pushed forward, and gravity delivers you into the crocodile's realm. The splash is brief. The screams stretch longer. Teeth close around flesh with a force older than any kingdom, pulling you under, twisting, tearing until the water itself drinks red. In parts of Southeast Asia, and in certain African courts, this was judgment, the condemned hurled into animal pits, their sentence carried out not by man, but by nature weaponized. To the crowd above, it was more than death. It was ritual, a spectacle that fused politics with the hunger of the earth. Here, the ruler needed no sword. The world itself was executioner. And in that blurring of power and nature, the lesson became clear. Defy authority, and even creation will turn against you. Your body is gone, swallowed whole. But the message, the terror, lingers long after the water stills. You hang upside down, blood rushing to your head, your body swaying in the grip of ropes. At first, there is silence. Then comes the rasp, metal teeth biting into flesh, sawing slow, deliberate, merciless. Suspended this way, the blood pools downward, keeping you alive longer, ensuring consciousness as the blade splits skin, bone, and sinew. From Europe to Asia, even the Middle East, chronicles record this punishment, sawing alive. It was never about efficiency. A sword could have ended life in seconds. No, this was about patience, about prolonging collapse. Each pull of the saw was a reminder that cruelty is an art form sharpened not by speed, but by endurance. The crowd would watch as the body opened, as the victim's voice thinned to a whimper, then to silence, while the saw kept singing its steady hymn. Death did not arrive suddenly. It was carved inch by inch until nothing remained but two halves of what was once whole. And in that patience lay the darkest truth. Suffering, stretched, becomes ritual. A chair waits in the square, simple wood crowned with an iron collar. You're seated, bound, the metal tightened around your neck. Behind you, the executioner turns a screw, slowly, deliberately. At first, it is only pressure. Then the vertebrae grind, nerves scream, breath collapses into silence. Some died swiftly. Others lingered, each twist of the screw a reminder that mercy was not the purpose. This was the garrote, Spain's infamous tool of strangulation, used not in the distant past, but well into the 19th century. Kings signed its warrants. Crowds watched its work. And each death proved that cruelty does not vanish with time. It adapts, disguises itself, survives beneath new flags and new laws. The garrote was not medieval shadow. It was modern. It was official. A reminder that civilization does not end cruelty. it perfects it. And as the screw tightens, you realize history's grip is still at your throat. The earth trembles before you hear it. A low rumble, the shuffle of colossal feet pressing dust into the ground. Then the breath, hot, damp, animal, washing over your skin. You look up, and the executioner towers above, not a man, but an elephant. Its eyes are calm, almost gentle, yet it has been trained, conditioned, turned into an instrument of empire. In South Asia, rulers commanded elephants to crush limbs, to drag bodies apart, to trample skulls until bone and soil were indistinguishable. The beast obeyed, not out of malice, but because obedience had been drilled into muscle and memory. Crowds gathered not only to witness death, but to marvel at control, that even nature's gentlest giant could be bent into cruelty. The spectacle blurred boundaries, animal and machine, justice and theater. For the condemned, every second beneath those feet was a prayer unanswered. For the ruler, it was proof of dominion, power so vast it could weaponize the breath of the earth itself. And as the ground shakes beneath you, you realize cruelty needs no hatred. It only needs obedience. A cage is strapped to your stomach, its bars rattling with frantic claws. Inside, a rat darts, its whiskers brushing your skin, its teeth already testing the air. Then the heat begins, fire set against the metal, the animal driven mad by burning. Desperate for escape, it finds only one path, down into you. Teeth pierce flesh, claws dig deeper, and your own body becomes the tunnel of its survival. This torment was whispered across centuries, from dungeons to prisons, each retelling proof of how cruelty evolves with imagination. Yet the rat itself is not the true horror. It is only an animal, acting from fear, from instinct. The real terror lies in the human hand that sets the fire, that straps the cage, that watches with cold patience as another being is reduced to prey. The rat gnaws, but it is man who carves. And that is the darkest ingenuity of all. A cage is strapped to your stomach, its bars rattling with frantic claws. Inside, a rat darts, its whiskers brushing your skin, its teeth already testing the air. Then the heat begins, fire set against the metal, the animal driven mad by burning. Desperate for escape, it finds only one path, down into you. Teeth pierce flesh, claws dig deeper, and your own body becomes the tunnel of its survival. This torment was whispered across centuries, from dungeons to prisons, each retelling proof of how cruelty evolves with imagination. Yet the rat itself is not the true horror. It is only an animal, acting from fear, from instinct. The real terror lies in the human hand that sets the fire, that straps the cage, that watches with cold patience as another being is reduced to prey. The rat gnaws, but it is man who carves. And that is the darkest ingenuity of all. A cage is strapped to your stomach, its bars rattling with frantic claws. Inside, a rat darts, its whiskers brushing your skin, its teeth already testing the air. Then the heat begins, fire set against the metal, the animal driven mad by burning. Desperate for escape, it finds only one path, down into you. Teeth pierce flesh, claws dig deeper, and your own body becomes the tunnel of its survival. This torment was whispered across centuries, from dungeons to prisons, each retelling proof of how cruelty evolves with imagination. Yet the rat itself is not the true horror. It is only an animal, acting from fear, from instinct. The real terror lies in the human hand that sets the fire, that straps the cage, that watches with cold patience as another being is reduced to prey. The rat gnaws, but it is man who carves. And that is the darkest ingenuity of all. When the iron cools, when the rope frays, when the last scream thins into silence, what remains? Not the device, not the corpse, but the echo of a choice. Punishment has always been more than execution. It is a mirror held to the soul of a society. Every wheel, every pit, Every nail hammered into flesh revealed not only how rulers ruled, but what people believed deserved such spectacle. Crowds gathered not merely to watch death, but to sanctify it. Cruelty was not chaos. It was order, ritualized and rehearsed, a theater where justice and vengeance blurred. The victim was only half the story. The audience was the other. And you, standing at the edge of centuries, are forced to ask, what terrified them so deeply that they built such instruments of pain? Was it fear of sin, of rebellion, of losing control? Or was it something simpler, the hunger to see suffering made visible so their own might feel lighter? In the silence after screams, we are left not with answers, but with a reflection. The true torture lives in us. The nightmare loosens its grip, yet it does not vanish. What you have walked through are not only the chambers of the past, but the corridors of the present. Each device, each cruelty, is a reminder. Humanity has always chosen how much pain it will permit, how much blood it will sanctify, how much silence it will accept in place of justice. These punishments were never only about the condemned. They were signals, warnings carved into flesh, burned into memory, displayed in streets, and whispered through generations. And though the bodies are gone, the warnings remain. Do not mistake them for ancient ghosts. They are questions aimed at us. What torments do we allow today? What cruelties do we disguise in law, in order, in necessity? Perhaps the devices are different, more hidden, less theatrical. But the essence, the will to control through suffering, still lingers. History does not punish the dead. It punishes the living who forget. And if we turn away, if we pretend these echoes are nothing but relics, then we become the next audience to cheer, the next hands to turn the screw. The warning is not behind us. It is here, waiting,